person I replaced as chair of Stop the War, I've got some very big shoes to fill. Andrew Murray.
Yeah, thank you very much, Murat. It's actually the second time I stood down as chair of Stop the War, and the pattern is now developing that the person who takes over from me becomes leader of the Labour Party. No pressure, Murat. Now, Louise began quite rightly by extending her heartfelt sympathies to the families of those British soldiers who died in the war that Chilcot has been examining, and of course all of us at Stop the War would associate ourselves with that sentiment. But before moving on to discuss the, as it were, domestic political ramifications of Chilcot, I think it's also imperative to say here that really this isn't mostly about us. It is about a country destroyed, hundreds of thousands of people killed, millions displaced, a culture and a society wrecked, poisoned by a sectarianism stimulated by the Anglo-American occupation, and our first condolences, our first sympathy, our first solidarity must always go to the people of Iraq, the victims of the war. Now, I've obviously not read the Chilcot report yet. I've only seen the coverage of it, but I did really feel from the very beginning there was no real need for a spoiler alert, in the sense that his conclusions have really been sprayed in neon 100 feet high over the last 13 years. What has he concluded? That this was a war of choice, that there was no need to embark on this conflict. He has concluded that when Blair and Straw were saying they were upholding the authority of the United Nations, they were really undermining it. That he did indeed give secret commitments to George Bush, admittedly in the language of a love-struck teenager, with you whatever, love you forever. That he did overhype the intelligence on weapons of mass destruction and gave it a weight it could not conceivably bear. That the legal handling of the legal position was, as he said, unsatisfactory, which seemed to consist of the Attorney General saying, I don't think this is legal, I don't think this is legal, I don't think this is legal. Tell me, Tony, is it legal? He says, yes, and that was the end of the legal consideration. It said that he didn't need hindsight to realise the occupation would be a disaster, that the problems were all well advertised from the very beginning, and that he was wrong about the likely effect the invasion and occupation would have on the prospects for Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And there's probably more too, which is there in the detail. But the fact is, everything that Lord Chilcot and his team have said, they could have got, not from spending 6 years and £10 million examining it, but for going along with a tape recorder to any Stop the War rally in 2002 and 2003. It was all there, Now, brothers and sisters, the question is, what is the main political demand we want to advance coming out of Chilcot? I know for very many people, and entirely understandably, it will be this, to bring Tony Blair to justice. That since he was sitting there, obviously so sorry for himself, feeling he's the real victim in all this yesterday, he might as well actually become a victim and answer for what he has done. But I think that in the last couple of, I would have said that too a couple of months ago and for many years before that. But I think there's a more important political demand coming out of the situation now, rising directly from Chilcot of the Iraq War. And that demand is this, that is to defend Jeremy Corbyn, defend his leadership of the Labour Party, and uphold the man that out war in 2003, campaigned up and down the country before, during and after the war for the demands of the anti-war movement. And I certainly never thought in 2003, when Tony Blair launched this war, that 13 years later, Lindsay and I and other comrades would be able to sit there and hear the leader of the Labour Party publicly apologise and publicly say this must never happen again. And that is a real change, and that is more important than anything that Tony Blair said. And it's not just a matter of the qualities of Jeremy Corbyn, it's also a matter of the qualities of those who are challenging him. Who are, both those who are centre stage and behind the scenes in this coup, are people who don't just want to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn because he's supposed to be unelectable or whatever. They want to take the Labour Party back to the neocon support for whatever the Americans do. They want to take it back to being a war party. And we're not supposed to be rude about people, so I won't comment too much about the intelligent, sensitive and charming Ian Austin MP who heckled Jeremy Corbyn from his back benches throughout his speech in the House of Commons. But I will say something about Alistair Campbell. Alistair Campbell said a few weeks ago he would find it very hard to vote for a Prime Minister like Jeremy Corbyn. When you read the Chilcot report, you can find out why. He wants a leader, work for a Prime Minister who will take some old junk off the internet and say, Alistair, can you make this into a 45-minute war threat? He wants to work for a Prime Minister who would say, let's pretend to go for a UN second resolution, but really it doesn't matter at all. He wants to work for a Prime Minister who would tell him black is white and white is black and go out and spin this, even though it's going to lead to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. My view, when I hear Alistair Campbell say that, is that a Labour government that is elected without the vote of Alistair Campbell will be the best, strongest, cleanest Labour government we've ever had in this country. The big lesson of Chilcot is that the British government goes into illegal and disastrous wars. The best way to not have a British government doing that is to elect a British government that doesn't want to do that, that's actually anti-imperialist rather than pro-imperialist, and that is the prospect we have if we support Jeremy Corbyn in this crisis. Now, finally, comrades, it's been said, and it's not wrong, that this report is a vindication of the anti-war movement and the Stop the War coalition, and indeed so it is. But I will say this, and this is a conclusion that John Chilcot would never draw. We need no vindication from the establishment. The message of Chilcot rather is, we need no establishment. Because they're all in it, if you go through it. The generals, the diplomats, the spies, the politicians, the media people, all of them, according to Chilcot, to take it, they are all either all idiots or criminals. We don't need that elite. And neither Chilcot, Scarlett, Taylor, Jackson, Blair, Queenshaw, not a single one of them is fit to lace the boots of the 4 million shoes that marched through London against the war. And the message of Chilcot is, we need to break with this elite, end this elite, that the ordinary people of this country were right then. We need to take the power over war and peace in our society, and the rest of them, to paraphrase Karl Marx, will remain the warmongers, nailed to that eternal pillory from which none of the artifices of their spin doctors will ever avail to redeem.